of the webinar is Marsha Kalika, and she is the Chief Education Officer for Outreach for the KZN Museum. I hope I'm getting that right, Marsha. Marsha, thank you very much for agreeing to collaborate with us, and thank you to the KZN Museum. We're really excited. I'm hoping to learn, and I know that those that are in attendance, they're also hoping to learn. So this is your platform. Please take us away. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Freddie. Thank you to the Scifest team. First and foremost, I'd like to say a very well done on Scifest and to Scifest for the way in which you guys have taken digital media to a new platform, especially with this whole COVID and the way it's caused disruptions. You guys have taken digital media to another level. We never actually miss Scifest because you guys have been so great with the whole science engagement and keeping everyone up to par with the networking. So just a very, very big well done to you guys. Yes, we are in the middle of, we are launching Arbour Week today. And if we look back at Arbour Week, it was first celebrated in 1983 in South Africa. And years later, there was this collective movement towards looking at how trees are so important and vegetation so important for building materials, for medicinal supplies, for food, as well as their whole scenic beauty. And because of this collective movement, government then decided in 1999 that we're going to move Arbour Day to Arbour Week. And so we started celebrating Arbour Week. So this year, Arbour Week is launched as of today, which is the 31st of August, and it'll run to the 4th of September. But every year, it's usually celebrated in the first week of September. And it's a campaign that falls under the custodianship of DAF, the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. And they encourage everyone to get involved and celebrate the beauty, the significance, as well as create awareness about Arbour Week, about indigenous trees and their benefits to us. And so when we look at how we appreciate our environment, how we show appreciation towards our environment, we come up with a whole lot of activities where we go about planting trees, greening our areas. And so the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, they really go all out in sort of bringing that knowledge to us. But at the same time, they focus on forestry and trees in general, as well as the importance of them in our everyday living. So when we look at the term forestry, we sort of dissect it down into 3 categories or branches, and we look at indigenous forests and how they are important to us. So they not only provide the whole medicinal aspect and the food, shelter, habitats, but they also provide that sense of aesthetic. And they're there because they are involved in carbon sequestration as well. And then the second branch or the second arm of forestry would then be our commercial forests. So we look at their importance in providing, they look at the importance of providing our materials for industry, as well as providing employment, because they're involved in large scale employment. So that's excellent for our country because of the whole economic growth. And then there's the third branch of metropolitan cities. So our metropolitan forests will comprise of how do we green our towns? How do we green our urban areas? We live in these concrete jungles every day, and we need to find a way to transform those living environments such that they become aesthetically pleasing, but we also improve the air quality around our cities and urban areas. And so the KwaZulu-Natal Museum this year has decided to promote 3 approaches towards Arbour Week. So we decided that we would focus on looking at seed bombs and Spekboom and companion planting, because they all really align to the goals for the International Year of Plant Health. We look at how we can increase crop yields and growth, reduce pesticides, food stability, as well as green our environment. So to start, I think it's really we really underestimate the whole value of planting. Planting is extremely important, especially the indigenous trees, indigenous vegetation. And for this week, we are celebrating Arbour Week using the Cape Ash, the Cabagia capensis. That's our tree of the year for 2020. And we're going to focus quite a bit on why that tree is important in this particular webinar, and then we'll look a little bit on the Spekboom, because the funny thing about the Spekboom is that next year, that's going to be our uncommon tree of the year. So indigenous vegetation, like I said, not only is there for the indigenous purposes, where it promotes medicinal use, shelter, building materials, food, but it sustains livelihoods. And not just sustains livelihoods, it creates this aesthetic value, as well as by getting our hands a little bit dirty, we sort of come into contact with the bacteria in the soil, a particular mycobacterium, which is known to stimulate serotonin. Now, serotonin is a happy chemical, and that happy chemical reduces the anxiety and the stress. It's known as an antidepressant, but at the same time, it also boosts your immune system. So it's actually a wonderful thing to just get involved and start greening using our indigenous vegetation. At the same time, we also be promoting our natural heritage, which is really important. Remember that when we promote indigenous vegetation, it's very different to that of the exotics, because indigenous vegetation is adapted well to our climate. Our indigenous vegetation doesn't outcompete for natural resources, such as your space and your water and your sunlight. At the same time, they are more resilient to our indigenous pests. And like I said, they promote the natural heritage. So our tree of the year that we're going to focus on this year is the Cape Ash. It is a really wonderful tree street. It's a beautiful ornamental tree. It's got lovely green fruit that ripens and becomes nice and red. It's got this, it's very characteristic of light gray bark to a very blackish, and it's used for blisters and ulcers, and the roots are extremely useful because if you pulverize them and just sort of sniff them, the leaves are used to treat intestinal worms. They grow to approximately 50 meters, simple to propagate because they can be propagated from cuttings or they can be grown from seed, and they really grow well in the Western Cape. They travel across the coast into the Eastern Cape, as well as extend into KZN, Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, and across our borders into Mozambique, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, right up to the DRC. So our tree of the year is really something amazing. And we, like I said, we have promoted 3 initiatives at the KZN Museum. We are promoting Spekboom, which is another indigenous tree that is the dominant tree that is found within our thicket biome. Spekboom is an amazing tree with a whole lot of uses. Yes, we call it the wonder plant because it's got so many uses. I mean, we can use Spekboom, which is this indigenous succulent that's widely spread across South Africa, but it's usually and most commonly found in the Eastern Cape, where you guys are, Scifest, and the Little Karoo. And it's versatile and needed by both animals and humans. So basically, Spekboom you could use to green by creating a lovely screen or a hedge in your metropolitan area. So that would be in your cities or your urban areas, especially where you find it a bit difficult to till the soil. Maybe you've got some inaccessible areas, so you could sort of grow them there. They grow very nicely. And Spekboom is one of those plants that grow very quickly, especially now that we're in spring, they just take off and root. And so Spekboom is used in our salads and our pickles. The flowers are used in honey production. They are used to treat mouth infections. If you chew on it, you can crush them and you can apply them to your eczema or your maybe some skin conditions that you could have. And it's also used to increase milk production for mums that are nursing. So Spekboom is extremely important. Like I said, it's indigenous, but it's got a whole lot of medicinal uses. Also known as the wonder plant because it's able to survive and withstand arid conditions. And by that I mean it follows a different photosynthetic pathway. So most trees or vegetation follow your C3, whereas Spekboom adopts a different photosynthetic pathway, one known as the CAM. It is the crassulacean acid metabolism. So Spekboom is able to, when they are in conditions that have limiting factors such as water, they are able to shut their stomata on their leaves during the day. So they reduce that evapotranspiration. And at night, they open their stomata, absorb carbon dioxide, store that in their vacuoles as malic acid. During the day, that is then transported to your chloroplast and converted into carbon dioxide again, and then it's able to photosynthesize. So it's one of those plants that are able to withstand and grow really well in arid conditions. And like I said, they're very well adapted, as most other plants aren't. In the same breath, Spekboom also has the ability to act as a carbon sponge. So it's known to absorb large amounts of carbon dioxide, which is then stored in its plant tissues. And that way, it just removes that greenhouse gas from the atmosphere. So like I said, it's one of those versatile plants because you can eat them. It's edible, highly nutritional in vitamin C. We can plant them as screens and hedges. They can be made into ornamental plants. We can use them for certain illnesses, so like the mouth infections, but they're excellent at carbon sequestration. And they're really good growers in arid areas. In addition to this, we have created mini videos. So I've created a mini video on the Spekboom and how easy it is to propagate. In other words, is you can literally take a stem cutting, leave it out to dry in the sunshine in a well-ventilated area so that you get a nice callus. Obviously with Spekboom, it doesn't need a lot of water, so you'd want it to dry out so that it develop that callus. You want that wound to heal. And then you could pop it into the ground or you could pot it. But the thing about Spekboom is that you'd want to have a more soil-less mixture, because a plant like Spekboom prefers growing where there's better drainage than growing in maybe waterlogged soils, for instance. So if you want to have a really successful Spekboom, you do it in spring and you take that tip cutting and you let it ventilate really well, and then you could pop it into the ground or into your soil-less structure, which has more sand, less soil, and then it would grow really well. And you could then transplant it to a more permanent home, create a bonsai out of it. It's got so many uses. There's just one thing I want to mention about Spekboom. Spekboom can be very easily confused with Crassula ovata, which is the jade plant. And the reason I say this is because it's so similar in appearance to Crassula ovata. But the thing is, Crassula ovata is not edible like how Spekboom is. Crassula ovata is mildly toxic. It's actually toxic to horses, cats, and dogs. Mildly toxic to humans, where if you had to ingest it, you may have a bit of vomiting. It will sort of alter your coordination. So in terms of that, you'd want to be sure that you're consuming Spekboom and not the jade plant. But Spekboom is a really awesome plant. So your Spekboom, formerly or scientifically known as Porticularia afra, or elephant's bush, or pork bush. I think elephant's bush gives it away because elephants love it. And because they top down browsers, they eat from the top down, you literally have these branches falling into the ground and they just revegetate. So it's one of those amazing, amazing plants, also very drought resistant, wind resistant, fire resistant. It's one of those things that you want to have and you want to be associated with. So when we talk about metropolitan forests, we're talking about our urban cities, we're talking about our urban areas, we're talking about our concrete jungles, and you need to be able to green them. The best way to do it is just to use your Spekboom. And then our second initiative is our seed bombs. Seed bombs is really an age-old technique, planting technique. It's not something new. It dates back to Japan, several hundreds of years ago. And it's really using earth, which is like your potting soil or compost, with a bit of clay and some seeds and water, and you just have a bit of fun mixing them together as if you were creating a sticky biscuit-like dough, and then you just roll them out into little balls. But the good thing about seed bombs is that you can throw them on the ground, and wherever you throw them, with a little bit of sunlight and a little bit of water, over time, that seed bomb would start to disintegrate, allowing for your seedlings to grow into mature plants. So the wonderful thing about it, and just to give you some information about some of these ingredients, is that when you use the compost or use the potting soil, it's providing that medium and giving that head start to your seeds so that they can grow into seedlings and then later into mature plants. When you use the clay, you're creating that outer layer, the protective layer that protects the seeds from being blown away by the wind or washed away by the water, or even eaten by our seed eaters like our birds and our insects. And then a combination of that clay and earth is what acts as a medium that's a carrier. So it can then be thrown into areas that are inaccessible or areas that you can't till, so that you are able to still revegetate that area. It's also a wonderful activity to get kids involved so that you can explain what Arbour Week is all about, or what trees are all about, what planting is all about, by getting them to get their hands a bit dirty so they can actually start mixing their hands with the clay or the compost and the seeds with a little bit of water to create a whole new wealth of knowledge and a plant that's there ready to grow. It just needs to be thrown on the ground. So seed bombs are extremely useful, and I mean, they're wonderful when it comes to using for vegetable gardens. I've used them plenty of times, and I've never had to really fertilize or water much, because remember, that seed sort of has everything it needs in that mixture, and when it's ready to germinate, it just does so. And our third initiative has been the companion planting. So companion planting, once again, is also a great strategy to planting. Basically, you're looking at taking plants that are compatible and growing them within a close proximity of each other so that they mutually benefit each other. And it's used to improve your yield, improve your growth, improve soil fertility, reduce pests and diseases and possible weeds. You can also attract mutually beneficial insects and promote biodiversity by just using companion planting. So I've thought of two examples, and since we're doing this whole indigenous greening, we can start off with the first one, which was looking at corn and something like cowpeas. So cowpeas is one of those high protein rich crops that's indigenous to Africa and extremely important in South Africa as a grain legume. And it's usually intercropped with maize, sorghum, or millet. And it's used because it provides nitrogen to the soil, which is so well needed for the plants around it. But at the same time, cowpeas provides a good crop cover. It's also used to deter insects such as the moth, because moths are known to lay their eggs on the maize and the sorghum, the stems of them. So it's used to deter that. And so when you plant these two together, you find that the one actually benefits the other. A more useful example, something that we can relate to, not indigenous, but we can relate to it because it's vegetables, would be our peppers. So we could grow peppers right next to some carrots, because carrots are amazing. They maximize our garden space. Or we could grow peppers next to onions. Onions are awesome because they act as an insect repellent, so they'll just repel your slugs or your aphids right away from your peppers. Or you could grow peppers right next to maize, because your maize and your corn act as windbreakers, but they also trap your aphids so that they don't get near the peppers. There's other examples where you could plant tomatoes with asparagus, because asparagus is known to keep the nematodes away. from the roots of the tomatoes. You could plant sage and thyme near your cabbage and spinach, which is something that I've done. I've planted thyme. You could plant mint. Mint herb is very well known because of its pungent odor. It deters certain pests. But you've got to be very cautious as well, because you don't want to plant herbs that love water with herbs that prefer better drainage. So for instance, your mint and your coriander, things that will prefer to be near water, whilst your sage and thyme will sort of prefer to be in your more drained soils. So once again, that's something to think about, but they're very easy to propagate. Yeah, so in terms of looking at those three initiatives, by looking at Spekboom and the importance of Spekboom, the fact that it's indigenous and we can use it to green those metropolitan forests, that's excellent. In terms of your seed bombs and your companion planting, they go hand in hand with looking at how we can improve our food crops, how we can improve the soil, how we can benefit the gardener, but the ecosystem at the same time. So how do we create that balance? There are wonderful planting techniques and strategies that are very easy to do, but at the same time, they're also very cost effective and they work. And then our last measure at the Museum for Arbour Week was we thought we'd put out an Indigenous competition. So we've literally running a competition that started, like, I think today, but we put it out last week sometime, and will run right through the 4th of September, where learners below the age of 12 could sort of pick an Indigenous tree that they thought, or they think is really interesting and appeals to them, and they could use recycled materials to create that tree, and then just tell us in a very few words why they chose that tree and what that tree is used for in South Africa. And then we are running that competition, like I said, till the 4th, and we'll then select the winner and award that winner with the Tree of the Year. So it was awesome Cape Ash that I'm telling you about, as well as a tray of vegetable seedlings with which agriculture, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and Sunshine Seedlings has donated. So we'll pick out 4 winners. The first winner will get the Tree of the Year with the seedlings, and the other 2 winners, the follow-up winners will receive the seedlings.
Sorry, if you have any question as an attendee, please just feel free to interact with us. And if you're watching from Facebook, we're also monitoring those platforms. Marsha is here to answer any questions. But yeah, I think she is just waiting for that cue if there's any questions from us that are in attendance.
I think while we're waiting for some questions, we can maybe just talk a little bit about Spekboom propagation. So in terms of Spekboom, like I said, propagating it is very simple. You take your stem cutting, your tip cutting, make sure you use a sharp scissors or a secateur, remove those leaves from the bottom of the stem so that it's nice and bare, and leave it out to dry in a nice ventilated area, because you want that callus to develop. In other words, you want the wound to heal. And you don't want to be using a blunt scissors or a blunt secateur, because that's just going to delay the healing of the wound. Once that's healed, and the reason I say this because I know a lot of people have sort of just taken Spekboom and popped into the ground. It really does grow well, but there are those instances where the plant has too much water in the stem, in the cutting, or it may pick up a bacteria. So you want to sort of dry it out a bit, and then you want to sort of make sure that it gets, it heals. And then you prepare your medium, where you put out your sand, and a little bit of potting soil, mix it together, and then you just pop in your stem and use your hands to press it down so that you hold the stem in place, water it, and leave it out in a well-ventilated area. And literally within 3 to 4 weeks, you should have some rooting, especially now that we're coinciding with spring, which is awesome because our rainfall season. And with approximately 2 months or so, you should get those roots circling the bottom of the pot. And that's an indication that you're ready to transplant it to a more permanent home, so that you can create a bonsai, or you can put it out to the garden, whatever you wish to do with it. And even with the seed bombs, very easy to make because you just literally measure out your potting soil, measure out your clay, put in some water and mix it really well together because you want to remove those lumps. Add your seeds, and this is where the companion planting comes in, because you can add one type of seed or you can add more than one type of seed. So seeds that are compatible, that promote that companion planting. And then you mix it all together and you can create those truffle-sized balls that you can leave out to dry for approximately 24 to 48 hours, or leave them on your windowsill for a few days. And once they dry, you can just scatter on the ground. And as they receive their water and a bit of sunshine, they will start to break down, disintegrate, and your seeds will germinate into seedlings and grow into mature plants. So some great planting tips. The first thing I would say would be go indigenous. Indigenous always works because they're really very well adapted to our localized climate. There's no competition for resources. Also, if you go local, indigenous, it means natural heritage. You're doing your bit for the environment. At the same time, it's easier to control your pests and diseases because we understand them better. And I would also suggest plant in spring because it's coinciding with our rainfall season, which is excellent. And then try and use some of your planting techniques. I mean, the whole thing with Spekboom has been around forever. It's a miracle plant. By planting a hedge of it, you are promoting the carbon sequestration. You can use it in your foods. You can use it for skin problems. Using seed bombs is a wonderful planting technique that's also been around for hundreds of years, but it's known to work. You can get kids involved. Areas that are inaccessible or that you need to revegetate, you could do it so nicely by just throwing your seed bombs on. You don't have to go there and fertilize or till the soil. You can just scatter them and watch them grow over time. And then obviously with your companion planting, that's a wonderful strategy as well. And it works very well with your seed bombs.
Okay, so it seems there are no questions coming, but my takeaway, Marsha, is to say we should go indigenous because there is no competition for resources. There's a lot of advantages with also, maintaining heritage. It's also what I take from the discussion today. And for you that attended, I think thank you very much for really attending. And my hope is that you were inspired and that we get, starting with planting. Are you planting yourself, Marsha?
Definitely, most definitely. I'm doing the seed bombs as well as the companion planting, and I'm going all out with the Cape Ash.
Yeah, great. So there's a question. There's I think Dan Matsapula is coming through with a question. Is that a question or comment, Marsha? Are you happy to take that?
Yes, I can see that one. I think most definitely there are definitely entrepreneurial opportunities for emerging farmers. There's a lot of opportunity when it comes to indigenous farming. There's also a lot of opportunity that's out there for vegetable farmers. I mean, I know of lots of government institutions that actually provide some funding, and they actually work with these farmers to get them off the ground. And a good place to start would be actually testing that soil to see what you have, what you don't have in it, and what's compatible to grow there. And then based on that, we can move forward with looking at it. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think why not? South Africa has amazing scope for it. and I think you'll never ever go wrong in it. Sadara College is a wonderful school to go in and get some great knowledge on farming practices. So yeah, I think definitely, most definitely, there's opportunity.
All right. Thank you. I think there is no further questions, and I just want to. I see that there is then colleagues that work with children. Please make sure to get the kids that you work with to get involved in the competition. I think it's a good way to get them learning and to get them, change, to get them to start thinking about changing the world from a young age by simply just planting a tree. So please pass on the message. We shall be posting, links to the KZN Museum page where they've shown us how to, where they've done actually uploaded videos on the Spekboom, and what else, Marsha?
We've got 3 videos that are done on how to propagate Spekboom from a cutting, and how to make a seed bomb, as well as some information on companion planting. So there's 3 little mini videos that are there, so you can always refer to them when you're doing your cuttings or when you decide to make some seed bombs.
Great. So this was a short and informative session. Thank you so much, Marsha, and to the KwaZulu-Natal Museum for just affording us this chance to learn. We are definitely going to take the knowledge that you've given us and just run with it and go straight into planting. Thank you so much. And to you, the people that have attended, thank you. We really appreciate you putting aside time to come and learn. And my hope is that you are inspired. So from Scifest, and from another question coming, because I'm just going to allow it because we were still within time.
Of course. A distribution map of Spekboom. I'm sure we can source one. I don't have one with me per se, but I'm sure I can get back to you guys. I could source a distribution map of Spekboom in South Africa, and then I can send it through, and then maybe you guys can post it up on the Facebook page.
Okay, thank you once again. Yeah.
No, because I think with Spekboom becoming, with people becoming more aware of Spekboom, like I said, that one of the uncommon trees of the year next year is going to be Spekboom, which are Portucalaria afra. We know for a fact that more people are going to learn about and want to know about it. So we could definitely get a map and send it through.
Thank you very much to Dante Stewart. I think this says thank you, very informative. Thank you very much once again, and this time from Marsha, myself, Scifest Africa, to you. Thank you, and let's get planting. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.